Shit off. What up? Woo! Let's go, Gouda! Woo! We got 11 people about to go to the class.
Yeah, we need some more American to come to Afghanistan and fight this war.
Get us out of here!
Let's go, Congress.
Hello, my name is Adam Hubbard, and I'm coming to you today from a deployed combat zone in Afghanistan to inform you about the rank structure of the United States Army. There's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about the rank structure of the United States Army, and hopefully by the end of my speech, any misconceptions and misunderstandings that you might have will be cleared up. Today we will discuss 3 different areas of the rank structure of the United States Army. The first one we will talk about is the rank structure of a enlisted soldier in the United States Army, from a private at the lowest ranking to a sergeant major of the Army at the highest ranking. The next level we will talk about is a warrant officer in the United States Army. At the lowest level, Chief Warrant Officer 1. At the highest level, Chief Warrant Officer 5. And finally, we will talk about the rank structure of a commissioned officer in the United States Army. Much of the information I share with you today comes from ArmyStudyGuide.com. The first area we'll talk about is the enlisted rank structure of the United States Army. The lowest level is a private. After a private is a PV2. The PV2 is also private but has been promoted once. After a PV2 is a private first class. Then it is a specialist and a corporal. They are at the same pay grade, but a corporal has more responsibility because he is a junior non-commissioned officer. After a corporal is a sergeant. After a sergeant is a staff sergeant. Here is a perfect example of a staff sergeant. He is the head of the section, is in charge of all soldiers. After a staff sergeant is a sergeant first class. The sergeant first class is usually in charge of platoon. After sergeant first class is a master sergeant and a first sergeant. First sergeant and master sergeant are on the same pay grade, but a first sergeant has more responsibility because he is in charge of a company and a battery. After a first sergeant is a sergeant major. After a sergeant major is a command sergeant major. After a command sergeant major is a sergeant major of the Army. He is the highest ranking enlisted person in the United States Army. The next area we will talk about is Chief Warrant Officer. Chief Warrant Officer at the lowest ranking level is a Chief Warrant Officer 1. Even though he is the lowest ranking Chief Warrant Officer, he still outranks any enlisted soldier, even the Sergeant Major of the Army. After Chief Warrant Officer 1, you have Chief Warrant Officer 2, Chief Warrant Officer 3, Chief Warrant Officer 4, and Chief Warrant Officer 5. Chief Warrant Officers are usually pilots and usually fly airplanes. The last area we will talk about is the rank structure of commissioned officers in the United States Army. At the lowest level is a second lieutenant. Here is a perfect example of a second lieutenant. He is a platoon leader and in charge of the platoon. And he graduated from West Point.
Oh, man, wait.
After a second lieutenant is a first lieutenant. After a first lieutenant is a captain. A captain is usually in charge of a company or a battery. After a captain is a major. After a major is a lieutenant colonel who is usually in charge of a battalion. After a lieutenant colonel is a full-bird colonel. After a full-bird colonel is a 1-star general, a 2-star general, a 3-star general, a 4-star general, and at the highest ranking of the commissioned officers is a 5-star general. According to ArmyStudyGuide.com, there has not been a 5-star general since General Eisenhower.
World War II!
Hopefully this speech gave you better understanding in the rank structure of the United States Army. To make sure you are not confused about anything, I will review it one more time. The first area is enlisted soldiers. Private, PV2, private first class, specialist, corporal, sergeant, staff sergeant, sergeant first class, master sergeant, first sergeant, sergeant major, command sergeant major, and at the highest level, sergeant major of the Army. Next is the warrant officer. At the lowest level, Chief Warrant Officer 1. Now remember, a Chief Warrant Officer 1 outranks any enlisted soldier. After Chief Warrant Officer 1, you have Chief Warrant Officer 2, Chief Warrant Officer 3, Chief Warrant Officer 4, and at the highest ranking level, Chief Warrant Officers is Chief Warrant Officer 5. And finally, we have the commissioned officers. At the lowest level is a second lieutenant. Even though second lieutenant is the lowest level, he still outranks any enlisted soldier and any Chief Warrant Officer. Next is the second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, full-bird colonel, 1-star general, 2-star general, 3-star general, 4-star general, and at the highest ranking is a 5-star general. I hope you learned a lot from my speech, and I hope you found it interesting. Thank you, and have a good day.